Hello, welcome to Cheshire. We're just outside Macclesfield for the final of the 1989 UK Mountain Bike Championship Series. There have been 7 races so far, run throughout Britain, and this is the big final with all the big riders and all the big prizes.
The mountain bike was invented in Marin County, California in the late 1970s, when a bunch of refugee road racers and ageing hippies started racing fat-tired beach cruiser bikes down the mountains in Tamalpayne National Park. They later modified the bikes for riding uphill and the mountain bike was born. Nowadays, mountain bikes are used by dispatch riders, by the Seattle Police and the Swiss Army, and for expeditions and just for getting about. Mountain bike racers come from all sorts of backgrounds, in cycle sports such as BMX and road racing, as well as dispatch riding, cyclocross, and unrelated sports such as fell running and rock climbing. Some just race mountain bikes.
The mountain bike is a modification of the conventional 10-speed bike, with important changes so that you can ride it off-road. Wide, flat handlebars with all the controls at your fingertips, motorcycle-style brake levers and thumb shifters for changing gear. You've got fat and knobbly tyres to give you grip in loose terrain and powerful cantilever brakes to slow you down. You've also got 3 gears at the front, 7 at the back, give you 21 speeds to get you up and down the steepest slopes. You can ride a mountain bike virtually anywhere.
Well, let's have a look at some of the main contenders, the riders who've been doing well in 1989.
For some years now, cycling has been a full-time occupation for world-class rider David Baker, last year's national championship winner. He's topped the cyclocross rankings as well, and this year became one of the first 2 mountain bike professionals in the UK.
The other pro is David's partner Tim Gould, a potential world #1 with a decade of race experience, particularly in cyclocross. Having taken the scene by surprise halfway through 1988 with David, Tim was aiming for the national title himself this year.
Fred Salmon turned from horsepower to pedal power after a motorcycle accident. Whether working as a team with David and Tim or out on his own, he's a formidable part of the Peugeot juggernaut.
Paul Hinton, a New Zealander, former road racer and courier, would be well qualified for the Mountain Bike Personality of the Year award. Having raced outstandingly in 1988, he's continually upped his pace in line with increasing standards to hold on doggedly to leading positions.
Despite his age, Welshman Tim Davies is a veteran cyclist, having been involved in competition for nearly 10 years. He's ranked highly in cyclocross and finishes consistently near the top in mountain biking. This is the 2nd season that Les Lloyd has brought his talents and determined attitude to the national championships. The ex-motorbike trials rider lets his finishing positions speak for themselves.
Sean McConamara first rode his mountain bike for fun and then realised he was a natural. He's now committed himself to having more fun by joining a team and working at it. This is paying off in his performances.
This is Nick Craig's first year mountain biking, having come from cyclocross where he was junior national champion. Despite being in the top 10, he didn't enjoy his first mountain bike race, but he's sticking with it.
1989 was Glenn Coltman's first season in mountain biking after enjoying several successful years on the cyclocross and road circuits. He finished a fine 3rd in the Man v Horse v Bike race this year. Deb Murrell basked in easy national championship victory last year, a tribute to her strength and guts, qualities which must have stood her in good stead in her former rock climbing days. This year she was defending her title under greater pressure.
Sian Roberts' history is in fell running. She raced first at the end of 1988 when, despite officially having novice status, her stamina and speed immediately showed themselves and she nearly won.
A foot injury forced Sally Hibbard to abandon triathlon, in which she'd represented Britain several times, and to adopt mountain biking. Considering this background, it's clear that she's challenging for the top. His times have placed him within minutes of the fastest racers in the country, and yet Carl Sturgeon is still a junior. His background is in BMX and he plans to expand into road racing.
There must be several experts warily watching Chris Bryan. 3 years after he first got on his mountain bike, he's now a strong contender for the Men's Junior Championship. What the remarkable Mick Ives hasn't learnt in his decades of biking can't be worth knowing. He adopted mountain biking relatively recently, having mastered cyclocross and road racing already.
Let's have a look at how they've done this season.
3, 2, 1, go! And they're off!
The season began at Cannock, where for the second year running, the weather was appalling.
Yeah, the Peugeot boys in the new strip.
Carrying on where they left off last year, the Peugeot boys are soon out in front. New team member Fred Salmon is seen here with Tim Gould. In the chasing group are 3 cyclocrossers, Schmooze Tim Davies, defending champion David Baker of Persia, back in training after an illness, and Kevin Saviston of Team Orange. Close behind, another new face, Glenn Coltman of Specialised. Only halfway through the first lap and the riders are already almost unrecognisable. Tim and Fred kept the pressure on throughout, eventually opening up a 4-minute gap on Tim Davies. The experts did 5 laps of a 4-mile course, and it wasn't long before Tim and Fred were lapping the tail-enders. Though how anyone could tell who is a mystery. The women's sports and seniors did 4 laps, with last year's champion Deb Morell losing her first MBC race, coming in a close second to Sian Roberts of Marin. Other winners were Jeff Standley in the seniors, John Saville in the sports and Carl Sturgeon in the juniors, who did 3 laps. Despite the weather, everyone enjoyed the course, though a bike wash was well needed at the end. Tim Gould sums up.
Very wet, very hard to see, there's lots of mud in your eyes, lots of mud on your clothes, very cold.
Thetford Forest in Suffolk hosted the second round of the series on possibly the hilliest course of the year. Here we see Carl Sturgeon climbing the only major ascent in the course, on his way to a comfortable second win. Meanwhile, in the women, Deb Morell was back to her winning ways. In the experts, the Peugeot team were relying on Fred Salmon for victory, and to start with he was looking good, but went off the course despite the calls of Glenn Coltman and Kevin Saviston, who now lead the race. The chasing group throughout was to be Nick Craig of Pedal Power, Andy Shaw of Barrettos, and Rally's Paul Hinton, who opened up a gap on the rest of the field. Kevin and Glenn worked together throughout the race until the last mile, when Kevin put in a final burst to win by 5 seconds.
In Scotland, the junior and novices race has a huge field, which creates the usual chaos at the start. At the end of an 11-mile lap of a slow grassy course, Carl Sturgeon was well clear of the field as he came in for his 3rd victory. He's making a habit of it. The second junior, Mark Mayers, was also making a splash. In the women's seniors and sports race, Deb Morell was looking to get revenge on Sian Roberts after her defeat at Cannock. At the halfway point, the leading trio were Mick Ives of Ridgeback, Hugh Slater, a local lad, well he's from Glasgow, and Rockring Rick Day of Slime Surfers, with Sian Roberts well clear in the women's race. Hugh Slater won a hotly contested battle over the 20. However, 3/4 of the way through the first lap and Tim Gould had already done his disappearing act on second place rider Kevin Saviston of Orange, with Fred Salmon running into early mechanical trouble.
7 mil, Alan King. Yeah. Down the bottom. 7 mil.
It's not often you see mountain bikers run down a hill, but this is one of the steepest ever in an MBC race. Riding's often slower than running. Giving it a go, however, are rally riders Paul Hinton and Rory Hitchens. Les Lloyd is faster on a bike than Julian Gould running, as is Jamie Carr, who gains places here. But Tim Flukes proves it's not always that easy with this elegant dismount. Halfway through the second lap and Tim Gould is still out on his own. The chasing group is led by Kevin Saviston, with Fred still having problems. Here he's being passed by Graham Rogerson of Schmooze. The normally skillful Jake Elliott of Rally, seen here ahead of Peugeot's Julian Gould and Ridgeback's Sean McConnamara, takes an uncharacteristic tumble into the bog. Back with the leaders on the fire track, and Graham Rogerson welcomes the opportunity for a drink and Fred the chance to get his cadence up. Meanwhile, Les Lloyd of Overbreeze has come through to fourth.
No, I'll see you back in car then. All right.
Tim Gould comes in ahead of Graham Rogerson, but both were disqualified for wheel changing, leaving Fred Salmon the eventual winner, with Les Lloyd in second, Pete Middleton third, and Glenn Coltman fourth. There's also a three-way race for fifth between Sean McConnamara, Overbreeze Alan Wakely and Stephen Wade of Orange, Sean just getting there first.
The fourth round, organised by Pace Research Cycles, proved to be one of the best courses of the year. Here the juniors and novices get away, with Carl Sturgeon and Chris Bryan leading out and managing to avoid the bottleneck into the woods. On the first descent, Carl and Chris are already well clear, and even the organiser on his motorbike is having trouble keeping up with them. This was a great descent, especially so close to the start, where all the riders had the energy to really go for it. By the end of the race, Carl had finally pulled clear, but wasn't letting up on the descents or the climbs. Not surprisingly, since Chris Bryan had given him his closest race yet. Both seemed happy with their results.
Good boy, 301.
Third place Nick Keane wasn't far behind, even if he was lost. There were problems in the second race for both the women and the seniors, who really needed a separate start. Instead, they were spread through the sports field after the previous day's time trial, and therefore couldn't see their competitors. Justin Sims quickly opened a gap, with Sam Mottart leading the chasing pack down this steep little descent. It was much trickier than it looks, especially with dust obscuring your vision.
Go, Sammy. Come on, Deb.
Deb Murrell on the right was the first woman through.
Paul Dunn in second place. Is that Mick Ives up front then? Yeah, it is.
At the end of the first lap, and it's a tight race at the front, with leading senior Mick Ives ahead of sport riders Paul Dunn and Justin Sims.
Up there, well, he's slipping a bit though. Go on, Paul, that's it. Paul, he's the strongest there.
A minute behind are Hugh Slater and Sam Mottart. Towards the end of the race, and Paul Dunn is showing his tail to Mick Ives, who resorts to a typical cyclocross method of getting up this hill, running. Second spot and third overall, Justin Sims is still looking strong, while Sam and Hugh continue their battle for fourth, Sam gaining the advantage here. Fifth spot, Gordon Davey is beginning to feel the heat. Paul Dunn looks well happy as he comes across the line in first, with the consistent Mick Ives gaining his third win in the veterans. Early leader Justin Sims is third over the line, followed by Sam Mottart, who jumps for joy, having finally gotten the better of Hugh Slater, winner at Peebles. Meanwhile, in the women's race, Sian Roberts is leading, having come from the back of the grid at the start. Only a minute behind and catching fast is Deb Murrell, who lost time with a double puncture on the first lap. Rebecca Wilson from Slime Surfers is comfortably in third, while Ruth Bowman and Ellie Rose fight it out for fourth. And that's Deb Murrell finally gaining a narrow victory, overtaking Sian Roberts just a few hundred yards from the line. The experts, as usual, jumped the gun at the start, with the Peugeot trio of David Baker, Tim Gould and Fred Salmon, front of the grid after yesterday's time trial, leading the way into the trees. On the first major descent, David Baker leads, but is in no rush since his teammates Tim and Fred have dropped back after touching wheels and crashing. The rest of the field follow in a cloud of red dust, mostly sticking to the dry, smooth track on the right. However, some, like the Schmooze riders who missed the time trial and started at the back, risk the rocks on the left to overtake. With the Peugeot machine now firing on all three cylinders, only Paul Hinton was staying with them. At the end of the first lap, Tim Gould and his teammates Fred and David are still out in front and looking good. Although Paul in fourth hasn't given up the chase. This neat dismount must have saved him valuable seconds up the hill. The big battle at this point was for fifth place, with Glenn Coltman just ahead of Jason Shackleton of Pedal Power. Further down the field and still dropping into the gully, narrow winding tracks like these make a great mountain bike course. In the bottom of the gully now on the second lap, the Peugeot boys are riding in formation, with Paul Hinton still chasing. The heat was really telling here as there was no cooling breeze. A new battle for fifth now, with Barry Clark of Wembley Road Club leading Glenn Coltman of Specialised, Les Lloyd not far behind. Over the top of the hill at the end of the second lap, and Tim and David seem to have lost something.
Hey! Shut the fuck off!
Yeah, go on.
Yes, off you go, Tim. David Baker hangs on to make sure teammate Fred Salmon is okay. Fred may be suffering from the heat now, but he's still no slouch. But Paul's got Fred in his sights, which is like a red rag to a bull. And he sets off in hot pursuit. At the top of the longest climb on the third lap, Tim Gould has already gone through, and now Fred is back with David and looking good again. As Paul comes up, he wants info as much as water, having lost sight of Fred. Peugeot tactics work again. But now it's time for him to look behind as well, because Barry Clark, now established in fifth, is gaining on him, having opened a gap on retiring Glenn Coltman. Les Lloyd leads Nick Craig up to the water point, with Sean McConamara close behind, and all three closing on Glenn. Another feeling the pain is Jason Shackleton, dropping down the field after a good start, with Andy Shaw of Barretto passing him here. After 20 miles of racing and with the temperature in the 70s, this hill was really taking it out of the riders, who were all down onto the little chainring to keep it going. Into the last mile, and Tim, now clear of any challenge, is still going all out, with his teammates just a minute behind and David still enjoying himself.
Smile.
The same can't be said for Paul Hinton. And he'd have been even less happy if he'd known how quickly Barry Clark was closing on him. So Tim Gould comes in for his second official victory, with Fred and David making it maximum points for Peugeot. Barry Clark finally got fourth, catching the very tired Paul Hinton in the last quarter of a mile.
Round 5 and the hottest day of the year. Again, the juniors and novices are in the first race, this time joined by the vets. It's a fast course, especially on the descents, but with one major Category 1 climb for the rider's usual dose of pain.
Now is this Mick Ives we see coming up?
First home was the leading vet, Ridgeback's Mick Ives.
Won every single race he's taken part in at the moment. Mick Ives of Ridgeback Cycle Land takes the checkered flag.
And next in was Julian Wynne, winning the novices category in his first mountain bike race. He'd been having a three-way battle with Mick Ives and Mick's newest team member Carl Sturgeon, seen here third overall and winning the juniors. After the Yorkshire round, it was decided that the women should have a separate start. Here they are, setting off a minute ahead of the sports with Deb Morell leading, and for a change the rest of the top women have a chance to keep her in their sights, for a while at least.
Down on the sports category, but 11:23.
But as they approach the quarry at the top of the course, Deb has opened up a gap with only the leading sports on her tail.
10 seconds then.
Sally Hibbard of Specialised is her closest rival and working hard. A lot of pain here. But now the good times roll. Deb was soon well clear of Sally, who is having her best race yet in the championships and looks comfortable in second, with Rebecca Wilson in third. Here's Ellie Rose, fighting hard in fourth. At the front of the sports, cyclocrosser Mike Bradbury has pulled away from the chasing group, with John Saville following them in sixth. On this fast track, the dust is really being kicked up, and leading woman Deb goes through in a cloud of it. The middle of the field climbs out of the shade of the trees before they're onto the heat of the fire track. Deb starts the final climb to the finish and an important win, though her teammates weren't taking their race so seriously.
Cheating, okay? Cheating on film.
The leading sports have come in with Mike Bradbury winning well. Deb Morell collects 5 vital championship points, which make her overall series leader ahead of Sian Roberts, who wasn't racing today.
So 2 successes first time, going for a hat-trick, maximum points. Deb Morell of Two Wheels Good.
In second and finally getting the result that her form predicts is a happy Sally Hibbard. Surprisingly, considering the heat, most riders had the energy left in their legs for a final sprint.
Coming up here, 3 riders going for the line.
So some hadn't done the full 21 miles. The experts. Once again they jumped the gun. On this occasion though, MBC's Tom Sillis calls them back. And eventually, reluctantly, they do turn back. Second time round, Tom was too fast for them, though they tried.
Is that Tim Gould?
Approaching the top of the quarry, and the Persia boys are in the lead with Tim Davies of Schmooze. But Tim Gould drops his chain and teammate David Baker drops back to help, leaving Fred Salmon to take over at the front.
One of the new Lay brothers. For Doors. Kevin Saveston I can see there.
He's hotly pursued by Davies, with Paul Hinton of Rally and Pedal Power's Chris Young also taking advantage of Gould's mishap. However, it didn't last long, with Tim and David soon back and meaning business. They'd stayed ahead of the chasing group, led by Les Lloyd. Leaving the tail-enders descending from the top of the course, let's join the experts as they reach the bottom. Tim has rejoined Fred at the front and they're flying. Close behind, David Baker has passed Tim Davies and is about to get Paul Hinton, with Chris Young in their dust at 6. Just look at them go. David's now back up with Fred and Tim's just ahead. For the second race running, Paul is in close contention. Cyclocross rider Chris Young looking like a real challenge in his first mountain bike race, and Tim Davies in 6th, looking for his first finish since Cannock. Halfway through the race, with the Persia riders looking safe at the front, let's have a look at the main field. Les Lloyd, Kevin Saveston, Sean McConamara, Andrew Lay, Steve Warland, Bull Skilbeck, Adrian Rochford, Julian Gould, Dan Cook, Carl Avery, Dev Richards, Andrew Shaw, Rory Hitchens, Jake Elliott and Justin Phillips. Now we pick up the Persia boys again towards the end of the race, and surprisingly they haven't yet made a clean break from the chasers. And it's Chris Young that's causing them concern. With Paul Hinton still close behind. Tim Davies is doing a solo job in 6th. Close to home, and they're enjoying the descent. Leading the Persia team in, it's Tim Gould taking first, Fred second, David Baker's third. They're 2 minutes ahead of Chris Young of Pedal Power, and 1.5 minutes behind him is Paul Hinton of Rally. Doesn't even know he's finished.
The last race before the final, and Mark Myers leads out the juniors and novices. Starting a minute behind them are the vets. Mick Ives takes an early lead and soon catches up with the main field of the juniors and novices. And in second place, Tom Eisel. On this short course, it's not long before leading junior Carl Sturgeon is lapping other riders, and quickly opens quite a gap over second place Mark Myers. It's a fast circuit with a lot of loose stone, and credit goes to the riders that there have been so few accidents, even on this corner. A continental finish means that after Carl Sturgeon has won, all the lapped riders finish at the end of their current lap, so a number of riders are in before second place Mark Myers crosses the line. Mick Ives makes it 5 wins in a row in the vets. But even the youngest riders love mountain bike racing. The women's and sports races had to be stopped after some local kids had altered the course. There were many confused and angry riders who'd wasted energy chasing round the hill. As they get away the second time, the women are led up the hill by Deb Murrell and, new to mountain biking, Melanie Grithell, who's ridden the Women's Tour de France. Close on their back wheels are Ellie Rose and Nikki Crowther. Leading the sports is Daniel Sussex and the novice winner from the Forest of Dean, Julian Wynne. The first half of the circuit was a constant climb. This section was a get off and carry. On the fast descents, Deb Murrell is again leading woman, but Ellie Rose in second is giving her a close run. In the sports, Julian Wynne, now with Specialised, slides round the corner in the lead, closely followed by Sam Mottart. However, John Saville didn't get it quite right,
Sorry. Oh, get up.
much to Daniel Sussex's dismay. Deb's technical skill gets around this corner in control, while Ellie Rose in second goes wide, but she's still close behind. She was to puncture on the last lap, allowing Nikki Crowther through into second place. Julian finishes well clear, with closest rival Sam Mottart also losing out to a puncture.
Got a nice short course and fast. I prefer sort of short circuits and I can get a lot more speed out like that.
Second place sport was John Saville, coming in just ahead of the lapped women Beth Mottart and Alison Garside, who are fighting for fifth. The experts start off with Glenn Coltman leading Fred Salmon and Chris Young up the hill. Fred soon takes the lead with Chris Young in second, well ahead of the chasing group. Fred is keeping the Peugeot flag flying while teammates Tim and David are racing in America. He's opening up a substantial lead from Chris Young, who in his second mountain bike race is again showing his class. Behind him, there's a tight battle for third between Paul Hinton of Raleigh and Tim Davis of Schmooze. Tim will want to do well today because he's on home turf and the race was organised by Schmoo. Once again, the fast descents are the main feature of the course. Giving the riders a chance to show off. Fred's still looking strong in first place. And so is Chris Young in second. In the battle for third, Tim has taken a slight lead over Paul Hinton. With Graham Rogerson in fifth. Don't know why he's sticking his tongue out, he set the course. Glenn Coltman and Jason Shackleton battle it out for sixth. Halfway through the race and Fred Salmon has punctured, letting Chris Young into first place. Tim Davis and Paul Hinton move into second and third. Fred, who's fixed his puncture, is now in fourth and chasing hard. As the race draws to a close, Tim and Paul are now racing for first. Chris Young's had a puncture and dropped back, and poor old Fred with a second puncture has dropped right out. Tim's looking good for his first championship win. Especially since Paul's also gone down with a puncture.
First place is punctured as well.
So as Glenn Coltman attempts to ride up this almost impossible climb, Paul Hinton sets about the fastest puncture repair ever seen. Further down the field, Dave and Martin of Schmooze are working closely together. A bit too closely together. To the delight of the Swansea crowd, Tim Davies comes home a clear winner. He's really enjoying it. Paul Hinton has fought on and comes in second, ahead of a battle for 18th between lap riders Daffyd Roberts and Martin Hughes. Schmooze almost as thrilled as Tim about the win, and another Schmooze rider, Graham Rogerson, comes in 5th. And Tim's reaction?
Great, I was lucky to win. It was Fred and Chris had punctures, but that was a tribute to my grandfather who died yesterday morning, so I wanted to win for him.
Let's have a look at the overall standings after 6 races, with each rider's best 3 performances counting for points. In the juniors, Carl Sturgeon looks unassailable in first, but if he has a bad day in the finals, Chris Bryan or Mike Myers could step into his shoes. Mick Ives in the seniors looks similarly unbeatable, though again, one bad day could let Jeff Stanley or Tom Eisel into that top slot. In the sports, it's incredibly close. No rider has turned in a consistently brilliant series of performances over the season, so it's wide open. In the women, only a point separates Deb Murrell and Sian Roberts, so their championship is going to be decided at the finals. In the experts, it looks like a Peugeot 1-2, and Tim Gould's 2-point margin really doesn't fairly reflect the fact that he's been beating fields by gaps of minutes all season.
There's no such thing as a flat mountain bike course, so let's go and have a look at the one round here at Macclesfield.
Riders who relish testing their high-speed bike handling skills get a treat from the start on this 5-mile course. Without even a gentle warm-up, it turns off into a rocky quarry that has everyone gasping for breath to reach the top, the highest point of the circuit. After pushing, pulling and maybe pedalling the machines up the climb, there's no time to admire the view before zooming away through loads of muddy puddles, down stony drops and then scrambling back up an awesomely angled incline nicknamed the Wall. It's a relief to stretch your legs again, hit high speed and leave the quarry behind in top gear to shoot down a metalled road that drops round to the back of the course. At the bottom you need to brake hard to slow down enough for a right turn. From here the track crosses a field, traverses a grassy slope and makes you tackle a short technical drop onto a delightful patch of rubble and broken brick. This is just about halfway and by coincidence the lowest point of the circuit. From now on back up to the home straight it's nearly all uphill. To approach the water point you have a straight climb up the driveway of a farm and then follow the wet and woody route as it winds upwards to complete the circuit. After probably nearly a mile it emerges from all the pleasant greenery into the sun and the start-finish area comes into sight. But there's another quarter of a mile to go through the woods yet and a steep descent to give you plenty of momentum and get you up the far side towards the finish line and glory. Here to illustrate some tricky bits are Tim Davies and Graham Rogerson of Schmooze.
Right, the first little bit is a steep climb which is cutting up quite dramatically, so during the race it's going to be a run-up.
As it is now, it's a lot of rocks and the ground is quite firm. We could ride it once or twice, but now that a lot of riders have been up it, it's quite cut up and the large rocks are becoming a bit of a nuisance. We can't get very much traction with the back wheel, so we're going to have to pick the bike up and run it.
If it was a little bit drier, you'd be sitting over the back wheel sitting down, trying to get grip with the back wheel, and maybe the front wheel will lift a little bit, so obviously you shift your weight forward a little bit.
The next little bit's a tricky little descent. You've got two options, one to the left, one to the right. The one on the left hand side is the best option. A lot of smooth mud, fast, a good base for the bike. On the right you've got a lot of rocks. There is a possibility of puncturing on that side there.
Basically what you're looking for is to stand up on the pedals, look about 3-4 metres in front of you, looking for rocks. Number one, you could fall off if you hit a rock, and number two, you could puncture. So we're stood up on the pedals, looking 3 or 4 metres ahead, looking for any hazards. Right, we've got a very fast descent here. It's quite smooth, but there's 1 or 2 little stones. So on any descent, you've got to ride at your own speed. No kamikaze stuff. Safety is always the first thing in mind. That little bit of a jump up there, that's for
the nutters really. You just got to be careful, know what you're doing. You know, be safety conscious. Just take your time. Have a good ride.
The next little section we've come to is a little piece we've nicknamed the wall. It's very, very steep, very, very slippery. As you can see from the film, I got off and tried to run up it, and as you can see, Graham was skilled enough to ride up it.
Yeah, I tried the climb a few times before, picking a line and seeing where the rough and loose stuff was. If you get a good run up and a good speed, when you hit the climb, change up the gears, get a nice pedalling rhythm over the top, keep the weight over the front, keep the front wheel down, push the bike over the top, and then just ride on as hard as you can.
But obviously during the race it's going to be a different kettle of fish. This is just warming up and just playing at it, whereas during the race you're going to be tired from your efforts, so I think during the race it's going to be a run-up.
The next section we're going to ride is a short little drop-off with 2 options really, left or right. They're both about the same. It's through a set of trees. If it's wet it's going to be trouble, if it's dry it's going to be okay. The 2 paths just go into one single path at the bottom, so you've got to fight for the bottom path really.
Just a couple of things to remember. Firstly, weight over the back end, so obviously don't go over the handlebars. Brake mostly with the back brake, a little bit with the front, because if you brake too much with the front end will slip away. And again, with your braking, very, very smooth, otherwise if you brake erratically, you're going to fall off. Wherever you are on a mountain bike, always take it easy. It's far better to lose 6 seconds than 6 weeks off work in hospital.
It's a 2-day meeting at the finals. On the first day there's a downhill time trial to determine the big race's grid positions, but before all that there's the observed trials, really tricky.
The aim is to get through each of the 5 sections with no dabs. That means without putting a foot down. A penalty point is awarded for each dab, and there's a maximum of 5 penalty points on each section, all carefully scrutinised by the marshal. Although it looks simple when it's done well, it's really easy to get it wrong, even with the advice of onlookers. And it doesn't help if your tyre lets you down. Each section demands different skills. Some test your power and concentration. While others require good timing. Though support from the crowd helps too. Sometimes it's that unavoidable rock that ruins everything. But even when you do get over the difficult bit, you've just got to keep it going, or else. Pete Webster in the juniors is at his best here and comes 3rd overall. Despite the odd dab. Richard Keys, winner in the sports, does it his way. While Hugh Slater, leading overall in the sports category, practices damage limitation with a calculated dab. Women's series leader Deb Morell seems to have lost her way. But she needn't be too concerned. Her nearest rival, Sian Roberts, is also having trouble. It's often a team effort, with tactics being determined by an early check of the course. And it's nice to see that many of the experts have developed handling skills to enhance their speed and power. Andy Shaw from Raleigh makes the camel hump look pretty easy here.
Watching the expert class, can you make your way down now to the downhill?
And so does Jake Elliott, who as an ex-BMXer is expected to do well. Their teammate Rory Hitchens runs into trouble, but after a little think, he works his way out. And Jake shows him how it should be done. Well, almost. Tim Gould, overall leader in the experts, is another who cuts his losses by taking an intentional dab. While Les Lloyd wins the observed trials with a great performance, he's the only rider not to have a single dab in all 5 sections. But it's nice to know that the experts fall like the rest of us.
Let's take a look at the time trial now. It's a 1.1 mile descent with a little kick in the tail, a small climb, but it really tests the rider's nerve as much as their skills.
What Bill's going to do is he'll put his arms out.
As the rain clouds build up, the riders gather at the top of the hill in pairs, giving them someone to race against.
Go!
Then they set off at 1 minute intervals. The descent of a gravelly track has some nasty bends in it, making it hard to stay on the straight and narrow. But you really don't want to lose control. That gravel hurts. Matt Mayers, third junior overall, flies down the track well in control. As do the leading pair, Chris Bryan and Carl Sturgeon, who are having their own private battle. However, it seems that all three went too fast at the start as they lost time on the hill and finished well down the field. In the seniors, Southend and County wheeler John Bronze takes a spectacular tumble, for which his only reward was a broken arm. He was back on Sunday as a spectator. Mick Ives, the leading senior, is cautious, but still no slouch. As always, he makes up time on the climb, finishing in 3 minutes 3.04 seconds.
1, go!
Go on!
Beth Mottart, the only female vet in the final, is also looking in control down here. Finishing closely behind Ruth Borman, one of the leading women.
Go!
Go on, Nicky!
In the third seeded women's pair, Nicola Crowther takes an early lead on the descent. But Sally Hibbard passes her on the hill and finishes just ahead in one of the closest pairings of the day.
Go!
The next pair off, Ellie Rose and Rebecca Wilson, continue their season-long battle, which sees them at present tied for third place overall. At the top of the hill, Ellie has definitely got the better of Rebecca and is pleased to see the finish line.
Go!
Go on,
This one is going to be really tight, as Shan Roberts can't afford to let Deb Murrell get away from her, or she'd have left herself an impossible task in tomorrow's final. Shan stays right on Deb's wheel all the way down the hill. But by the top of the climb, Deb has really put the power on and pulled away. She finishes an excellent time of 3 minutes 0.8 seconds, 4 seconds ahead of Shan, putting herself in an almost unbeatable position for tomorrow's final. In the sports, Sam Mottart, son of Beth, is very impressive and wins the class, putting himself well in contention for the overall championship. His time of 2 minutes 41.9 seconds would have placed him 5th in the experts. In the top sports pair, Hugh Slater only just makes the start.
Go!
With John Saville failing to get into his toe clips, Hugh pulls away comfortably. And pushing a huge gear on the climb, he finishes 4th in the category. So he remains 1st overall, with John's 2nd equal overall. Now let's see how the experts fare. Paired here are Graham Rogerson of Snooze and Rally's Rory Hitchens. Rory leads Graham across the cattle grid, by now very wet and slippery. But Graham puts in a mighty effort on the hill to finish with the fastest time so far, 2 minutes 39.75 seconds.
3, 2, 1, go!
Third seeded pair is Les Lloyd of Overburys and Pete Middleton of Pedal Power. Les is one of the fastest through the gate at the bottom, really exciting the crowd. But he loses time on the climb, though he still comes in well ahead of Pete.
6th or 7th and...
Go!
The pairing of Paul Hinton and Fred Salmon provides a real needle match between the Rally and Peugeot teams. Fred leads the way at the bottom, but Paul closes the gap on the climb and catches him. As they crest the hill, Fred's got enough left to close on Paul, taking him on the line in the most exciting finish of the day.
3, 2,
The final
1,
pair off with the two
go.
Tims. If Tim Davis is to have a chance of overall victory, he can't let the Peugeot rider get away from him. Davis sticks with Gould all the way down. These two riders really know that they've got a battle on. As they top the climb, Davis is a clear lead and finishes with the day's fastest time.
And it's Davis.
Gould made a bad gear change on the climb, which cost him vital seconds, placing him 5th overall.
This morning is leading the National Championships.
Tim Davis is well pleased with himself, but in this weather no one's stopping for a chat.
What happened, Tim? Lost your beers?
Yeah, just saw him too high again, man.
Really nice weather.
In preparation for the final day's racing, let's look at how the points table has changed. In the juniors, Carl Sturgeon and Chris Bryan are now level pegging on 17 points. Whoever wins today's big race wins the championship. In the seniors, Mick Ives looks comfortable in first place with 20 points, despite a poor performance in the observed trial. The sport is wide open. Whichever one of these riders crosses the line first wins the championship. In the women, Dev Murrell picked up enough points on the observed trial and the time trial to place her in an almost unassailable lead. Sian Roberts needs to beat her by 4 places in order to win the championship, and that isn't likely. The battle really here is for 3rd. In the experts, Tim Davis has come from behind with a storming performance in the time trial and a good observed trial run to pull 9 points ahead of Tim Gould. This means that Gould has to beat Davis by 5 places in order to win the championship.
It's been raining all night, but here we are Sunday morning. It's bright, it's sunny, and everybody's getting ready for the big races.
After yesterday's time trial, lots of competitors are camped by the start, and with the rest arriving early, there's a lot of pre-race activity. Mountain biking has developed its own ritual of last-minute bike maintenance. And for the spectators today, there's an added attraction, this impromptu bunny hop competition. Now the juniors and novices line up for the first of today's races.
Organiser Robert Kinsey starts them off and barely manages to get out of the way.
The start is always important. There's a rush to the front before the narrow sections.
We can watch some of the jostling for positions with Mudcam, our own on-bike camera.
After yesterday's observed trial, Carl Sturgeon and Chris Bryan are on equal points overall, so this is going to be a tough battle.
But Chris will have his work cut out since he hasn't come close to Carl in a cross-country race yet.
Also going through there is Mark Mayers, and with Pete Webster in 3rd, it seems all the top riders have had a good start.
Come on, Tim, get up and carry it!
But it's a bottleneck for most of the riders as they come off the road.
We're at the high point of the course now, where Carl Sturgeon's work rate is putting pressure on Chris and Pete.
And all three have opened up a big gap.
Now on the way out of the quarry, Carl has opened a 15-second lead on Chris.
The rest of the field is really strung out and we're only a couple of minutes into the race.
This is the fastest part of the course. Pete Webster is getting some speed up. He's opened a 30-second gap on Mark Mayers in fourth.
This tarmac stretch may look easy, but if you're not in control around this bend, you're forced across the broken surface, and that's no fun at about 35 miles an hour.
We go back to Mudcam to approach the lowest part of the course.
This is a section where a lot of the riders will be giving their legs a bit of a rest.
Climbing again, and we're with Chris Bryan, who's lost sight of the leader Carl Sturgeon. And Pete Webster, in his first MBC race, is an unknown quantity and looking strong.
Back to Mudcam and the main fielder on the longest climb of the course, up to the farm and the water point.
And this was one simple straight slog. Carl is now on his second and final lap, and despite the pain, he's keeping it going.
He's got a 2-minute lead, but he's not about to drop a second of it as he carries his bike up here.
Chris Bryan is safe in second, but he prefers to push his bike up.
This is easier, but in the long run it's slower, and you can hear how hard he's having to work.
Round the back of the quarry, and despite the mud, Carl is still looking good.
This young rider really is at home on a bike.
He does seem to have an edge over other riders. It may come from the confidence of always winning.
Yes, you can see that again here, over the unrideable wall, where he doesn't allow his concentration or rhythm to get distracted for a moment.
This is something you only expect to see from the top-class experts. No doubt something he's well on the way to becoming. But Chris Bryan's sheer doggedness keeps him in contention.
For the mere mortals, the pain goes on.
Rejoining Mudcam, and Carl is less than a mile from the finish and the Junior Championship.
Two minutes behind him, Chris is taking it easy on the final descent, secure in second place.
Here we have Carl Sturgeon coming up to the finish line now. The final, and this year's winner of the British Mountain Bike Series in the junior class. Well done, Mr. Chris. Number 2 this year, the most unlucky man in mountain bike racing.
In second and happy about it is Chris Bryan. How did they see their battle?
Well, I know I'll do him in the race, but he's never been near me in other races, so I can't see why I would have us. And,
yet to come in the side of that.
Tried to keep on his wheel.
Into the line, and coming up the line now. What's happening as they go through?
I couldn't see him. Giving my best, kept going, but there we go, seconds, good.
Third over the line, David Jones is first novice, with third place junior Peter Webster next in. As Carl Sturgeon goes off to celebrate, it's time for the women to decide their championship. Let's join them for their 3-lap race.
And a good start, Ellie Rose leading out there with Deb Morell on her right. And Sean Roberts tucking into...
Ellie Rose's fast start is evident again on the grassy climb off the road. Following on her tail is championship leader Deb Murrell, with Sian Hughes, observed trials winner, in third.
15 seconds. Go.
A minute behind, the vets set off.
And Chris Richards leading out with Thomas Eisel tucked in, Sam Cook and Mick Ives trying to break through on the right.
And that's Tom Eisel leading out Sam Cook.
So,
Overall leader Mick Ives waits to pounce in third.
now 10 points at stake.
At the top of the hill, and the battle is on now between the informed Sally Hibbard and Deb Murrell. But Sian Roberts can't afford to let them get away if she's going to have any chance in this championship. Following Sian up the hill is Rebecca Wilson, Nikki Crowther, Ellie Rose and Ruth Bowman.
Go.
The final category to set off in this race are the sports. This is the largest field of the day. And the most open contest, with more than 10 riders in a position to become overall winner. But Paul Bethel at the front here is in his first mountain bike club race, so he's not one of them. He's followed by John Saville, Nick Lawton, Sam Mottart, Brant Richards, Hugh Slater, Andy Stevenson from Lakeland Mountain Bikes. This cast of thousands are the real grassroots of British mountain bike racing. Meanwhile, the vets reach the top of the first climb, and guess who's at the front? Mick Ives.
Come on, Jeff. Go on, Jeff. Go on, Jeff. Stick with him.
Jeff Stanley of Lakeland Mountain Bikes sticks with him. A minute behind, the sports are making a dash for the top, and there's no clear leader as yet. Joining the women in the quarry, Sally Hibbard has taken the lead. But she seems to be going the wrong way, and that's led Deb Murrell out into first place. Sally's not going to be happy about that. Sian Roberts must get back in contact with the other two if she's to have any chance in this race. Jeff Stanley there as a vet is in front, followed by Nikki Crowther. Strange that Mick Ives isn't in the lead here, but here he comes, not far behind. On the road from the quarry, Paul Bethel is the surprise early leader, already well clear of the field. In just 10 minutes riding, he's put 2.5 minutes behind himself and Deb Murrell, and they're not hanging about. He's also 1.5 minutes up on the vets. There goes Sian Roberts, followed by Sam Cook, Nikki Crowther, Brant Richards, Tom Eisel and Brant's dad Chris. Doubtless Sam Mottart is now well ahead of Beth Mottart. Let's join Mudcam with the leader climbing through the trees towards the end of the lap. Paul might be new to the championship, but he certainly knows his way around a track. A minute behind, Andy Stevenson passes teammate Jeff Stanley to move into second place. Deb Murrell and Sally Hibbard still close together, another further minute down. In the sports, Sam Mottart pulls past veteran Sam Cook. These guys are not out for a Sunday stroll, but the whole main sports field is sticking together. Meanwhile, in the women's race, Sian Roberts is losing touch with Deb and Sally. He's fighting off a challenge from Nikki Crowther. Further down the women's field, Sian Hughes pops a wheelie. On to the second lap, and Paul Bethel is nearly 2 minutes ahead of the next man, which is Mick Ives, who's finally got ahead of Jeff Stanley.
Go on, Jeff. Go on in the gap.
Andy Stevenson makes climbing this look like hard work. Go on, Andy, you can do it.
Dig in, Sammy.
Sally seems to be getting the upper hand over Deb now with a 13-second advantage. Off the top of the quarry, Mick Ives is getting into his relentless rhythm.
Well, hi guys.
Hi there, Andy.
I'd like to be on the video.
Third spot here's Guy Moores with his best showing this season, just ahead of Jeff. In the women's race, the biggest surprise of the day is Nikki Crowther having opened a 15-second lead up over Sian Roberts. And Sian's really having to work to try and close that gap. Onto the wall now, and leader Paul takes it in his stride. He's now 2.5 minutes up on Mick. It really makes that look like hard work.
Go on, Jeff. Go on, Jeff.
The battle for second in the sports is between Andy Stevenson and Guy Moores. Behind them, Sam Mottart, Gordon Davey and Hugh Slater try different methods of climbing the wall. In the women, Ellie Rose, Rebecca Wilson and Ruth Borman fight it out for 5th place. While at the front, Sally's increasing her lead over Deb. Sally carries her bike up, while Deb shoves it. Towards the end of the second lap now, Paul Bethel takes this corner cautiously. Nicky Crowther struggles up the wall. This piece of climb really is a nasty section at the end of the quarry. Come on, Mick, you can go downhill faster than that. He really isn't trying. If he doesn't speed up, Jeff Stanley's going to catch him. Joining Mudcam on the top of the hill, Deb Murrell ploughs her way through the grass. We see from the way her shoulders are wobbling here, maybe she's getting a little tired, but she knows she doesn't need to beat Sally to win this championship, she just needs to keep ahead of Sian. Sally takes this hill fairly cautiously, she doesn't like it. And Deb's taking no risks either. Onto the last lap, and Mick Ives has pulled down in front. Paul Bethel dropped out at this stage with a puncture. That leaves Andy Stevenson in first in the sports class, followed by Guy Moores. Further down the vets, Tom Eisel and Chris Richards fight it out for 5th. And Sian Roberts has pulled ahead of Nicky Crowther, who took a couple of tumbles in the quarry. In the sports, Gordon Davey is just ahead of Hugh and Sam, with John Saville seconds behind. Whichever one of those final 3 crosses the line first will win the series. And Andy Stevenson's taken the overall lead from Mick Ives on the descent. This is a fast descent, and Andy's a good descender. Sally's still ahead, and she's pulled a little bit more of a lead out from Deb. But Deb looks fairly happy with herself. Lee slides through in 6th there, which means Sam Mottart has disappeared, another victim of the dreaded punctures. Sam's been unlucky this season, a really bad run of mechanical problems.
No puff.
Half a lap to go, and both Sally and Deb are looking fairly happy. And we're following Guy Moores, second sports rider. And that's Mick Ives just ahead. First over the line is Andy Stevenson. And the unstoppable Mick Ives has made a clean sweep. He's won every veteran race this season, making him 1989 champion. Quickly back to Mudcam now, where there's a real battle going for the sports title. It's going to be a fight between Hugh and John. Whoever crosses the line first is the sports class champion. So as John makes a final challenge, let's hear what Andy and Mick have got to say about their race.
That's some down hills, but it always gets me up the hills.
I just pace myself. I use my running to gain, take it easy on the descent.
126 goes across the line.
And Hugh Slater becomes Sports Class Champion, just getting the better of John Saville on the line. The women's race is nearing its end and it looks as though Sally Hibbard is going to get her first mountain bike club race win. But Deb's quite happy, she knows she's netted the championship.
Holy shit!
Hands up, first lady across the line today. Excellent, stellar performance, right? Right, here comes Deb.
The 1989 Women's Champion, Deb Morrell.
Third position in the race overall, but had a struggle today. Looks like
Shan Roberts hangs on to third and Nikki Crowther comes in fourth.
Look at that type over there. Sponsored of the sports race.
Were you worried about Sally? Could you have caught her?
If you need to do any on the course repairs, then I suggest that K Cycles, who have been here today and kindly sponsoring us, drop the bits and pieces you may need. If you need to get them at a good price, today's the time to do it. Here comes, look at the state of this, a grim grit. Oh, it's all on the line, yes!
Ellie Rose came in fifth to finish fourth overall in the championship.
Which will be taking place at 4 o'clock at this point in time, given the course.
And now for the big one. The final of the experts to decide the 1989 national champion. There are 15 possible winners, but all eyes will be on the two Tims, Gould and Davis.
As the pack streams out of the gate, that's Graham Rogerson in the lead.
Rory Hitchens has already had a crash at the start.
On the tricky section of the quarry, Tim Gould is in front. He won't be riding with Fred Salmon today.
Tim Davies must be feeling good. He's got a 9-point lead over Gould.
So for Gould to win the title, he's got to be at least 4 places clear of Davis.
And Fred Salmon's job today is to get ahead of Davies.
Gould will be hoping that the likes of Paul Hinton and Nick Craig will help him out.
Tim sets out on what could be a lonely ride as the main field comes through the quarry.
It'll be interesting to see how the tactics of these two develop.
Fred will want to get ahead of Davies without giving him someone to chase. Gould stomps up the back of the course at an incredible pace.
Let's join Mudcam now as the main pack descend on the road. Look out for that Volvo around the corner, boys.
Tim and Fred are just through and here are Paul Hinton, Nick Craig and Graham Rogerson chasing.
The next group's led by one of the Lay twins.
It's still close. That's the first 10 riders within a minute of each other. By the third lap, Tim Gould's got more than a minute lead.
But he won't be pleased that Tim Davis is in second place.
The way the riders keep up their rhythm on this hill is really impressive.
I feel tired just listening to Fred's breathing.
Look at the speed Gould's got, even up here.
Paul Hinton's working hard too. He's in fourth place, 2 minutes 50 seconds behind the leader.
Close behind him, Graham Rogerson is cycling up the hill.
Tim Davis and Fred Salmon are only seconds apart and having a real battle down here.
While Tim Gould makes his way out of the quarry.
Les Lloyd makes heavy weather of this hill.
But he's in 8th place, at the head of the rest of the field.
That's Pete Middleton of Pedal Power, Ridgeback Sean McConamara and Andrew Lay of Doors.
Kevin Sabiston is just ahead of Jason Shackleton up here, with Dan Cook, David Adaman and Steve Warland giving chase.
Tim Flukes has his own way of carrying a bike, while Cal Embleton prefers to ride.
It's tight for fourth place between Paul Graham and Nick.
Why do I always hit a tree?
Maybe you should duck your head a bit more, Graham.
Meanwhile, Tim Davies has increased the gap between him and Fred Salmon to 25 seconds.
It's hard luck on Alan Wakely, Les Lloyd and Andrew Lay, who have all punctured here.
The Overbreeze riders, Les and Alan, are on their way again,
leaving the less experienced Doors rider behind.
I saw that. Time to take my front wheel out.
Even from this distance, you can hear Paul's bellows working.
This flat section of the quarry gives the riders a chance to stretch their legs.
Mudcam follows Tim Davies on the fast descent.
The riders really relish this chance to relax without having their body jarred too much.
In the quarry now, and Sean McConamara is in 7th.
But he's having problems too.
And that's let Pete Middleton through. The main field are filing through the quarry as Tim Gould is in the trees towards the end of his third lap.
Through this section, he's still the day's fastest rider.
Having now opened up a 2-minute lead over Tim Davies, who's still just a few seconds ahead of Fred Salmon.
But that's all the gap he needs.
Gould's lead is now 3 minutes.
It must be getting to him that despite this fantastic ride, the championship appears to be out of his grasp.
All Tim Davies has to do on his final lap is keep going, as he's 3 minutes ahead of Paul Hinton in 4th place.
Go on, Tim. Well done, Tim.
Although Fred's still with Davies, he knows he can't help Gould on his own.
But you've got to admit that Gould's the best cross-country rider.
And Paul's attacking the hill.
Well, he does love to entertain the crowd.
And anything Paul can do, Nick Craig will have a go at.
Here's Tim Gould in the quarry for the last time. He seems to be flattening out that wall. And Tim Davies is coming down off the top.
Gould has done 22 miles at a breathtaking pace, and his speed, style and rhythm are all still there. In the quarry now, Fred Salmon's got ahead of Tim Davies for the first time, but only just.
Fred's making his final bid for his own placing. He knows he can't help his teammate. I'm sure Davies isn't worried.
Paul Hinton's consistency is paying off.
He must be one of this year's most improved riders.
And there's Nick Craig in 5th place. He's still got lots of energy. So, as Tim Gould reaches the top of the back of the course, the main field is still in the quarry.
Half a minute down on the man in front.
Let's join Mudcam with Tim Gould on a final descent.
Tim crosses the line 3.5 minutes ahead. He's won every race.
On their final descent to Fred Salmon and Tim Davies.
Davies is about to become champion and he can't resist telling us.
Back with Mudcam and Fred climbs out of the trees to the finish.
What did Tim Gould think of the course?
Oh, I like the climbs. It's nice, some of the descents were good.
Was he worried about the challenge behind him?
I don't know, they were about 45 seconds down off the first lap, and then
Right, work from the course right now is that
I was fading a bit on the last lap, so
away from Tim Davies.
I kept an eye out that they weren't catching together.
His teammate Fred is second over the line and third overall in the championship.
Completely relaxed, and right behind him, Mike Johnson. The two of the Peugeot riders come across the line together.
But we're with the champion now as he comes into the finishing straight.
Right now with mobile video, full video for this particular race. We have coming up to the line now, we've got Tim Davies, who comes interviewing a big hand, ladies and gentlemen, the overall winner of the Mountain Bike Club final of this year, Tim Davies.
Tim Davies, the national MBC champion.
Hello guys.
Well done, Tim. Of victory on the...
Was Tim Davies ever in doubt?
Has obviously happened far too late in the race to affect any of the positions he might have played up. Big hand of applause, ladies and gentlemen. This man up and running on the line normally doesn't work. This could be a big
Paul Hinton comes in fourth.
He curves across the line. The big hand as he comes
He's
through.
followed by Nick Craig,
Well done.
with Pete Middleton and Rory Hitchens in a sprint finish for 6th, with Dan Cook a minute behind in 8th.
Rory must be well pleased after his appalling start. Sam Cook congratulates his son. And Jeff Iverson of the Yorkshire Mountain Bike Club had one too many Tindaloos the night before.
I think there's a very good chance that he would have finished much quicker than he.
So let's have a quick look at today's results. In the juniors, Carl Sturgeon wins his 7th Mountain Bike Club race. He's won every junior class race he's entered this season. As has his teammate and manager Mick Ives. Ridgeback's policy of signing up the best riders in the minority categories has paid off. In the sports, with another new winner, Andy Stevenson. No one has won more than one race in this category. It's been tight. In the women, Sally Hibbard has finally achieved the result that her talents deserve. After a season of falling off, she finally manages to stay on her bike and wins this race. In the experts, Tim Gould turned in an awesome performance, but with Tim Davies third, it just wasn't enough.
The seniors for the 1989 Mountain Bike Club National Championship.
Here's the senior championship table. Mick Ives at the top is no surprise.
1989 Mountain Bike Club Junior Champion.
The Junior Championship table looks like this. It'll be interesting to see how these riders fare when they race in Sports and Expert class next year.
Therefore, years later.
In the sports results, any one of these riders could have taken the championship, and they're all faces to look out for next year.
From Two Wheels Good, Deb Morrell. For 1989 Women's Mountain Bike Champions.
In the women, Deb Murrell hangs on to her title for the second year running, the only successful defence this year.
And you also get each a replica of the Schmooze Trophy. The three best mountain bikers in Britain: Fred Salmon, Tim Gordon, Tim Davis.
In the Expert, Peugeot's tactics have come unstuck, with Tim Davis nipping their championship plans in the bud. It's noticeable that the standard in this class has improved dramatically since last year, when Tim Gould and David Baker looked completely unassailable.
So that's how he won. He was carried the whole way round.
As Tim's carried aloft, let's have a musical look at some of the season's highlights.